Suits is a show that has enjoyed new life on streaming platforms, but within the 9-season run, there are some episodes where fans have jumped off more than others. Suits initially began airing on the USA Network back in 2011, and while the initial response was positive, it wasn't necessarily explosive. However, it wasn't long before the show hit its stride, the characters came into their own, and Suits became a fan-favorite legal procedural drama. Thanks to the clever writing, the dynamic relationships, and the balance of comedy and serious moments, Suits continued to hit its stride for several years with Mike Ross and Harvey Specter at the center of it all. However, the show did eventually begin to dip in terms of quality, and with changes in the core cast, it got easier and easier for longtime fans to drop the series. Now, following Suits' resurgence in popularity due to its success on streaming platforms like Netflix, it's worth looking back and seeing where the drop-off points in the series occur most frequently. Suits Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. Now, the pilot for Suits is seen by many as one of the best pilots of any procedural show, with a compelling foundation laid out for the primary cast, and the chemistry between Mike and Harvey immediately creating a dynamic that draws the audience in. But, despite all of that, the show isn't for everyone. With that in mind, the first episode of Suits is likely to be one that could turn some people away, especially if this show doesn't align with their personal tastes and preferences. It likely convinced some others to engage with a legal procedural, but for others, the pilot was probably the beginning and end of their Suits journey. Suits Season 1, Episode 12, Dogfight. However, there are a lot of people who understand that new shows take time to actually get into a groove. So, after the first 12 episodes of the series, as Season 1 rolls to a conclusion, it starts to become more clear what to expect from any given show, and Suits was no exception. 12 episodes in, Suits had firmly established the procedural element of their narrative. Every episode sees Mike and Harvey team up to face a new conflict, and they need to come up with clever ways to win their case. This formula becomes familiar, and there is a reason that procedural shows are so popular, but again, it's not for everyone. By the end of 12 mini-arcs, the hook of the Season 1 finale was that Mike's secret was now exposed to Jessica Pearson, but that may not have been enough to get more casual viewers to come back for Season 2. However, if audiences made it as far as Season 2, it's likely they stuck around for a while as the show hit its peak over the next few seasons. Suits Season 6, Episode 1, To Trouble. Suits Seasons 2 to 5 are some of the best and most gripping parts of the entire series, and it's hard to imagine anyone walking away during the height of the show's popularity. However, one of the most intense season finales comes in Season 5, when Mike is finally faced with the consequences for his lies as he is sentenced to prison. The fallout of this moment comes in Season 6, and while it makes sense for fans of Suits to return to see what happens next, the shift in dynamics with Mike behind bars makes the show very different. This change was ultimately too much for some viewers, and enough to end the streak as the glory days of the show appeared to finally enter the rearview. Suits Season 6, Episode 10, PSL. Now, undoubtedly, this is a great episode of Suits. Season 6, Episode 10 sees Jessica Pearson depart the show as she makes her way to Chicago to pursue a new career and life with her fiancé. The issue is, Jessica is a core part of the show that drove a lot of incredible storylines, and her absence is sorely felt. For fans of Suits that love Jessica, it makes sense that this episode may have marked a stopping point due to the imminent changes that were coming to the series. Little did we know at the time, Jessica's legacy would continue to impact Suits in a less than positive way that we will get to in a second. Regardless, this episode marks the end of an era, and it likely led to a portion of the fanbase parting ways with the show. And in hindsight, this is a pretty good jumping-off point before the quality of the show starts to deteriorate in a much more noticeable way. Suits Season 7, Episode 12, Bad Man. Partway through Season 7, after a number of convoluted and confusing storylines that continually take these epic characters and make them into caricatures of themselves, Episode 12 takes things to another level. Firstly, the whole episode revolves around a case where the team at Spectre Lit targets a donor for not giving more money, which feels laughable and frankly absurd. But more than that, the way that this episode tries to explore personal relationships is constantly out of step with everything that came before. Harvey and Donna's dynamic is off, Louis is struggling to figure out his romantic life, and Mike goes head-to-head with a lawyer that presents no real threat, while continuing to shout and angrily rant throughout. It's awkward, and it feels as though the spark of the main show has fizzled out in a way that ultimately tarnishes the show and makes even longtime fans fed up with the direction the show is now moving in. Suits Season 7, Episode 16, Goodbye. Now, the end of Season 7 gets even more tricky as the show prepares to send off two of the core characters who have been at the heart of the series from the start. Mike Ross and Rachel Zane have decided to move away, and losing these two means there is guaranteed to be a major shift in the dynamics of the series going forward. In principle, there is nothing wrong with that, but just like when Jessica left, this means that the show won't be the same, and fans of these characters are likely to drop the series and move on to something new. However, this episode did Mike and Rachel wrong by using this moment and the previous episodes to try and set up a spin-off. Jessica returns from Chicago briefly, and she reveals that she has gone back to working in the legal world in her new home. It would be nice to see Jessica back and get this update in general, but the fact that it's being used to try and promote a new series at a pivotal moment for the main show just feels uncomfortable. Suits Season 8, Episode 1, Right-Hand Man. If the Suits Season 7 finale wasn't enough to turn some ardent fans of the show away, then Season 8's premiere was likely the last nail in the coffin that ultimately spelled the end of the epic legal drama series. Here's the issue: by the time Season 8 comes around, very little of the show's core remains intact. Yes, Harvey, Louis, and Donna are all still there, but the original ensemble cast has been stripped back, and the series had to turn its attention to a new group of up-and-coming lawyers.